to the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs. We are continuing on our series called the 2024 Strategy Toolkit series. And we've had some great acronyms for you over the last several weeks. And we're going to throw another acronym at you today. And the acronym of the day today is PESTLE. We're going to teach you how to do PESTLE analysis. Raj, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Drew. Pretty exciting topic for us today.
It is. It's an exciting topic. It's another acronym, so we can easily remember it. Now, PESTLE stands for Political, Economic, Social, Technological, Environmental, and Legal. And those are all different factors that as a small business entrepreneur, small business leader, you need to understand, you need to be aware of. And Raj is going to tell us the context of specifically when PESTLE analysis gives us the most bang for our buck. So Raj, let's jump right in. So PESTLE, tell us about it.
So Drew, if you go back and look at it, those are the 6 factors. And all the 6 factors are external to our business. That is one thing I want people to remember, piece of it. And the second piece of it is you want to use PESTLE 80 to 90% of the time when you're doing your 3-year planning. Okay. And sometimes from a 1-year planning aspect. So strategy planning is not complete without a PESTLE analysis. And based on my working experience with a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, 80% of them, they would not even know what it is. Yeah. And they're not even prepared for that. But just knowing and thinking about it a little bit will really help the organizations to be proactive and really take advantage of it or mitigate the risks of some of those things.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many examples for these in analysis. I was actually talking to an economist a few weeks ago, and he made me aware of the tax rebates or tax discount that Americans have been enjoying related to childcare, the childcare tax credit. And he said that's going to drop off this next year. And he told me a huge number of childcare centers that are projected to shut down once this goes through, because people just calculate and they'll say, look, I'm only making enough to cover childcare. I might as well just stay home and watch my kids myself.
Exactly.
Right. But that is a political, or maybe could even fall under legal edict that's coming out, right? A tax change, tax code change, that if a small business is unaware of that and 2024 comes around and they're like, why did I have 10 people drop off my list of childcare families that I'm working with? That would really mess them up. So this is very important, like to think about these things. And especially like you're saying, to look out 1 year, 3 years, 5 years in the future and say, hey, what's coming up that we've been enjoying that is no longer going to be there, or what is going to come on the future that we could take advantage of. So these are external, like you said, whereas SWOT analysis, we have strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external. You're saying PESTLE is everything external, but it really gets specific with the opportunities and threats that are out there, because we're talking about different domains with this PESTLE.
So Drew, to your example, I'll give a different answer to the economist answer. If you are a daycare center, you might lose business. Yeah. But if I am in an office center, if I am part of a big corporation, or if I'm located in a place closer to the corporations, I would change my business model from being a business to consumer. Instead of going after the parents, I will go to the corporates and tie up with them. If I have the 1 to 3 year time frame, now I'm developing a marketing strategy and say, how do I go back and convince these people and use this as their employee retention strategy? So if one of the parent is working because they have the facility for a child care and now that will be gone, then at least the employers can go back and say, you know what, I want to retain my employees. Yeah. So let me give back and collaborate and get a discounted rate or a different business model. So there is a threat in that piece of it. And if you really look at it, it can become an opportunity as well, if you can change the business model.
Yeah, that's great.
So there is always 2 sides for each one of those things. And that's the reason why you need to take the time during the strategy planning session. So one of the biggest thing everybody knows is our COVID-19, right? And if you look at the government, basically the political piece of it from there, the biggest one was the PPP, right? Paycheck protection piece of it. Yeah. And there are a lot of people who utilized it to keep their doors open and survive. But some of the companies who were very, very proactive, they really leveraged that to go back and solidify and grow their businesses.
Yeah.
So one of my clients, I know that piece of it. They had enough margins and enough profitability that they would have survived without PPP. But since it was a long-term loan with a very, very small interest rate or interest free, I don't know that piece of it, but it was like you can repay it over 20 years. They took the money and they hired 6 outstanding employees during that because the market was shaky and everybody was surprised with the talent available. So they went and made that 6 months before the pandemic ended. They went and put their bet on that. And they had the money to do it. And guess what? They're thriving in today's market. They thrive even before the pandemic ended, but now they have such an edge of it. So for some people, they kept them going and they kept the doors open. They survived it. And now they're slowly limping back to normalcy. For some, they really became proactive.
Yeah.
And the only reason they were proactive is because they were looking at the PESTLE model. And I said, how is this going to affect my business?
Yeah.
So just to give you an idea, we spent 3 hours just discussing on this part of it, on the PPP opportunity. Is it good or is it bad? And we spent 3 hours, just the CEO and me on this. And that was one of the best decisions they made.
Wow.
So that is the political side of it that we need to go back and keep on thinking about.
Are there any questions that we should ask ourselves with the political side? Should we imagine, next year's a election year, so you want to be aware of that and things that might change. If there's a new party, what could change? If it's the same administration, what stays the same or what changes they make? Since if Biden gets reelected at the time of this recording, if he gets reelected next year, then he doesn't have to worry about getting elected again, so he can do whatever he wants, right?
Exactly.
A second-term president, they can do whatever they want. So you kind of got to game out what's on his wish list, and then you got to think, okay, what's on the other side's wish list? More than likely, what would they want to change, and maybe think through that. Is that kind of how you do that political side of things, or do you
Yes.
do local?
No, you're looking at it from a macro point of view, and you want to look at it from a micro as well.
Okay.
So basically, if you go back and look at it, if the Democrat Party comes, they have a certain philosophy and there are certain things they bring. So if you look at the historical piece of it, they might be there. But that coupled with some of the recent issues and challenges will give you an idea of that.
Gotcha.
So if the Republican Party comes, what will happen? So you're going to be looking at it from 2 points of view. Generally, again, I'm no expert in the political side of it, but I want to go back and say, if you're looking at a government from a democratic perspective, they are more about pro-government grants. There are more grants like the PPP and some of those things that will come into the picture.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at it more from, let us say, the Republican government, you want to be watchful about the tax policies. And most of the time, they were beneficial for the entrepreneurs and the businesses side of it. So with that lens, you start investigating and looking at it. And then you go back and watch what is that people are promising and how are they winning, because they need to fulfill that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the grants and the tax policies are the 2 major things I always look at it from the political side of it.
Okay, perfect.
So you want to go to the next one?
Let's do it. Let's go to economic.
So the second one is all about the economic piece of it, right? So basically, if you look at it currently, what is the biggest economic factor? Inflation and interest rates. And if you look at it from smart investors, they're taking up a lot of opportunity to buy properties. They will not be going after the commercial properties, but mini commercial properties, mini residential properties, housing, some of those things, because there's not much inventory in the market, but whatever inventory is there, they're gobbling up much faster. So that's a very interesting phenomenon. At least my example has been through Los Angeles and California and everything else, because my daughter and a few other people were buying it, and I had a lot of discussion about that piece of it.
Yeah.
So some people might say, hey, high interest rates, people are pacing out of them. So some of the people are not even getting into the market saying this is very high.
Yeah.
But there are some people who are saying, you know what, the competition is very less. So depending on who you are and how and what your philosophy is, one will be an advantage to become more aggressive and one will become a conservative. Again, opportunities and threats, right?
Yeah. And that part of it too, from a real estate standpoint, it is so, you really have to know your specific market. Generalized market analysis for all of US is not going to help you. You've got to understand what the market is here, because in the southern region, the Southwest, we're seeing the highs were higher and now it's starting to come down a little bit, whereas Northeast stayed pretty steady and are even seeing little mild year over year increases. This is residential in residential markets. And so it's different, right? It's different based on regions. And so even if you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, like I am, before you put a branch in Connecticut where you are, right, you need to do some research because it's going to be different conditions. And yeah, so that's maybe more on the micro level. More on the macro level, I don't know. It's an interesting time on the economic, and it's changing daily. Like we said, VUCA, right? Exactly. We're in this volatile environment. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so, I mean, early 2023, you saw a lot of the gurus and experts saying they really thought there was going to be a recession in 23, and there wasn't. And that all went away pretty quick. And then now you're hearing some of these same folks talk about a recession again in 24. But who knows, right? It's one of those things where you got to just keep your finger on the pulse.
Yes. And if you look at it from a small business also, right now with the interest rates and stuff. So if your clients are really conservative piece of it, got to change your business model to be successful. Like in the past, I'll go back and give you two specific examples within my clientele.
Okay.
For people and stuff. So there was one client who's very aggressive, and he said, Raj, I don't want to go into the next year with all of these things. Can I bill you for the next 6 months of services? I want it to be done in this year, because they have some sort of an advantage and they want to take advantage of it. So they're paying me right now invoicing, and I'll be providing the services over the next 5 to 6 months. So that is one who's aggressive, and they're seeing some of those things that really helpful for them.
Yeah.
Then there is one other client, they're seeing a little bit of basically slowing down in their customer base.
Okay.
They're not ready to hang up their hat and be completely, but they say, Raj, is that okay if we go back and take and make them into 12 payments for the next 12 months? So I, as a small business, if I can feel comfortable with both of those things, yes, when I go back and do it, I need to look at my tax consequences because I'm getting next year revenue this year.
Yeah.
So I need to look at it from that advice, but I can make a proactive decision. And the second piece of it is I can go back and look at the other client and go back and say, it's a little more operational work because I need to send them an invoice every month instead of sending 1 or 2 invoices. So it's a little more work for me, but I'm being much more customer friendly and client friendly so that they can go back and retain that.
Yeah.
And that is what you'll start noticing. Even in the pandemic, about 20 to 30% grew their business, while about 40 to 50% lost their business. And these are some of the tweaking that goes back and happens, especially in the small market. So if you look at a small business making $500,000, 1 or 2 clients asking for this might be 20% of your business. That makes a difference. So each contract is 50,000, 60,000, 20% over 100,000. But if you're a little bit flexible with a little more work, why not take advantage of it? So that is the thought process, which I really encourage my small business clients to go back and look at it. How does it affect us? And that opportunities and threats and this kind of details is critically required. The PESTLE provides the questions, and very, very specific analysis has to be done with that point of view.
Yeah, there are unlimited questions really you could ask underneath each one of these topics. You could spend the rest of your life looking at the economics of a decision. So really you have to customize these questions to your organization, your industry, and then reflect on the impact to your specific business.
Yes. And that's the piece of it. And the key part of it is taking the time to ask the questions. Reflection, research, thinking, and taking the time to think through all of those things.
Yeah.
And that is where the value of this comes. I mean, I can do a PESTLE analysis in 1 hour for a business, but would it give me the depth like what we were talking about now? But if I go back and say, I'm going to spend 1 to 2 hours every day for about the next 4 or 5 days. So that is going to be a rich research for me. And I can make much more data-based and research-based decisions.
Yeah.
And I can convert some of the challenges into profitability as well. So I would have lost 1 or 2 clients. When I say lost, they would have put me on hold for the services for the next 6 months or 12 months.
Okay.
But coming up with basically 12 payments, I still have them. So it's a little more work, but for me, that is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So now I took a threat and made that into an opportunity.
That's wonderful.
And that is exactly what you want to go back and look at it. So for small businesses, they need to constantly be looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So we got political, economic, now social. Now with social, when I think of social, I think of like social unrest. I think of, heck, we've got some social unrest right now. There's the war in Israel and Palestine. It's polarizing. There are every weekend now is unrest, social unrest among people and protests and so on. So is that what we mean by social? Or are we thinking more about like the social demographics or societal, like what people do there? You take, in some countries you take a longer lunch, in other countries maybe you take a shorter lunch. Hey, I just heard something about your the country that you were born in India, that there is an organization that is considering going to a 70-hour work week, where 70 hours is the base. And the entrepreneur that was talking about it thinks it's the best idea ever, and India is just going to take over if they do that because of the work ethic and what they'll get done. But which social are we talking about? Social media, Raj? What are we talking about?
So here you are right on two aspects. But the first one, when you talk about the social unrest, so that is not a social unrest problem related to social, but the effect of it comes from the political and the economic side of it.
Yeah, you're right.
That is what you want to, because of the unrest, one, political, right? Because there are a lot of political decisions being made, funds being transferred, things like that. And the second piece of it is the financial implications. So those two, I would not address this, because any of those social unrest issues are going to be covered from a political and financial point of view. Okay. Here, I'm talking about the demographic shifts. I'm talking about the lifestyle changes, the consumer behaviors, things like that. So one of the biggest thing, if you notice, for the past 2-3 years that comes to my mind is work from home. That is a big shift and change. So in 2021, everybody thought that was the best thing that could happen. Productivity was high and everybody really worked very, very well. So the whole economic, the savings, everything really changed positively.
Yeah.
But now, for whatever pressures and everything else, now the reverse of that is happening. So if you look at companies, they're mandating that you need to be at work for 3 days. You need to be mandated for 2 days. You need to go back and do it. And some organizations have to the extent saying, if you don't show up work for 3 days in a week and you're not consistently showing, you're going to lose your bonus eligibility.
Wow.
So it is the complete extreme from 21 to 23. So that is a great example. And if you're looking at it from a small business perspective, it is always going to be a mixed reaction. I have a client in Houston and he says, no work from home for me. I need my people here, and that is there. So even in 2021, he put that mandate, putting masks, everybody had to come, and even today is there. So for him, it was not a huge change. Once he implemented that, he lost 8 people. They said, we're not coming. And then he said that was okay, and they left and he replaced it. And after that, there was no issue. But some of the big consulting companies, some of the other organizations, they gave them the tech companies gave them the flexibility, and they're having a very tough time bringing people back.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of dissatisfaction among these people. So you will have either or from that perspective. So you need to be very, very careful. So one of the clients I'm working with and staff, even before we hire, we are designating as which one is work from home, which is not work from home, and telling them a percentage upfront.
Yeah.
So we recently went back and hired somebody for an IT support function. So what we said was 60% of the time you are flexible enough to work remotely. But 40% you have to be in the office. And they're making sure that we are taking care of that upfront even before the person joins.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So that way you can go back and learn from it, because we have seen 21 going to one extreme, left field, 23 coming back to the right field. So next 3 years, we don't know which way it goes.
Yeah.
And then what we are concerned about is if the government comes up with some sort of legal, then we need to be ready to face that as well. So right now, when we go back and say, hey, this is the job and you're voluntarily taking it, legally, you are at least covered. The person knows and expects that, oh, you know what, I'm only eligible to work 60% remotely.
Yeah.
There are some jobs where they're saying it is 100% in the office. And they have classified a couple of sales jobs where it is 100% remote.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sales jobs have been remote for the longest, many of them, because, and I think this is why it's very clear on if you're successful or not at your job in sales.
Yes.
Right. And I think if employers could get more clear on their expectations and they could hold people accountable, then I don't think remote work is a problem. But if you don't know how, or what people are doing to achieve success in your organization, if you haven't really set the priority for them, then yeah, your measure of success is seeing a butt in a seat. And so I get it. I know there's definitely value in coming into the office. That could be a whole podcast episode in and of itself, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I think it really does come down to, do you know how to measure effectiveness, productivity for your employees. If you don't, then you probably should get them back in the office, because that's your only measure of productivity.
And Drew, what I noticed is if you don't have clear job descriptions.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. So what I tell people is I always use the word three-dimensional job descriptions, and it is not a 3D. But what happens is you need to have, each role has 4 to 6 key accountabilities. That is dimension one. Again, this is my definition, and a friend of mine taught me this. And the second piece of it is, what are some of the tasks you need to do to accomplish the key accountability? That is the second dimension of it. And the third dimension is, what are some of the key success measures for the role? And what I would say is, if some fundamentally they go back and define their roles in this 3D format, what happens is everybody knows what is expected from day one before they get into the role.
Yeah.
Now, you know how to hold them accountable. You know what the key success measures are. And then you go back and work with the client and say, the customer or the employee, and say, this is how you're going to be measured.
Yeah.
So that will make it much more easier for them to come right. You know what? I really need to meet my manager or my mentor or my coach or officer at least 4 or 5 hours every week. So let me go into the office twice a week, versus, you know what? I cannot do this without other support. Let me go there full time, and I will be there Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
So that is one of the dimensions which I have been learning for the last 3 years, and that plays a very big role as well in this piece.
Yeah, that's great. So you said the main objectives, some key tasks, and then what success measures are in this role.
Yes, key success. So key accountabilities, key tasks, and key success measures.
That's great.
And then you look at the social factors, and you can go back and tweak your products and services as well. So if you go back and look at it, each one of us, everybody, Zoom has become a household name for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many other tools, but Zoom and Zoom equivalent, any of the online video chat training programs, that have become second nature to everybody else.
Yeah.
And that, based on the model it has made life very, very easy for a lot of people, especially small businesses like coaches, consultants, and stuff. They leverage that to a maximum extent. So they're saving cost for themselves, and they can pass on that to their clients as well. Like, I've been working with my client in Philippines and in Dubai. I have not seen the Philippine clients in 2 years. The Dubai, I met them last December, but because I was going to India, I stopped in Dubai, spent a day and a half with them, and then went to my home place, India. But basically, I have not seen them, my customers from the Philippines. But we are very, very comfortable. We've been working with it. We are solving their problems. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
So we can tweak some of our business models as well, based on the social factors and how people have been able to change and adapt to new things.
Yeah. And it's so the social aspect, kind of where we're going as a people, what are becoming the new norms. It's how I kind of think of it, like the cultural norms within your company.
Yes.
Every region, every area has their own cultural norms, and you'd be wise to know what those are, so that you understand kind of how people present themselves, it's like wearing a suit in a beach town, right?
Yes.
If it's a beach town, everybody wears beach wear all the time, you know? And so wearing a suit might not have the same effect that it would if you were in New York City, you know?
Exactly.
And kind of the expectation that you'd wear a suit. So yeah, those are all great factors. So we have political, economic, social. Now we're getting into the T, technological.
Yes.
Oh, this is an easy one, right now. What is your AI strategy, small business leaders, entrepreneurs out there? What is your AI strategy? Have you figured that out yet?
And that is one of the biggest thing for it. And people who have not going to adapt into AI, they will be left behind with higher cost, lower productivity in the next year to 2 years. So each one of them has to start looking at it.
Yeah.
Even solopreneurs can incorporate that and become very efficient.
Absolutely.
And it is huge. And I have a couple of examples. Like in the past, basically my clients, they have found software. They need to go back and nudge and almost like adapt their process to somebody else's standards, because they were not customized to that. But if you look at now, what we call it is low code and no code programming. I'm sure you heard of that. Everybody knows ChatGPT, but low code and no code is something a lot of people don't know that. But
yeah, no, I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah. So what it is they have come up with different ways of writing code, and with very, very minimum code writing.
Yeah.
So there is a specific technologies that have been developed about it. So now people are developing SaaS products with that.
Wow.
They have a shell and they can very easily customize it. So the cost of developing customized solutions for a business is becoming faster and faster and cheaper and cheaper. So my clients, I have two clients who never thought of going back and building their own software. And in the last 18 to 24 months, both of them are very, very close to developing a complete enterprise software because of the low code and no code, and the cost and the investment has gone down by over 50%.
That is fantastic.
So that is what people like. A lot of people talk about chat GPT and AI. Yes, that is there. But even in addition to that, there is a lot of this low code and no code and the SaaS softwares that you can be customized as well. So each one of them has to look at it and say, how can I gain the technology advantage? Where can I get the productivity piece of it? Like the e-commerce platforms, everybody has been utilizing the e-commerce platforms and how they have been doing that. That has become second nature to a lot of people now.
Well, and you talk about low code, no code technology and then AI. One of these, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but the guy's been talking about AI for years and years. MIT, you might know him. He's a Stanford professor. But anyways, I was listening to him, and he says, how he likes to say it is, AI is the new electricity. And he said to the same degree that our lives completely changed and we couldn't even imagine going through life without electricity, that's what he believes AI is going to be. And we won't even remember a time that we lived life before AI. And that, now when you think of it that way, you start to go, okay, like, I have to get on this bus. I have to start figuring out how this can give my company an advantage. Because like you said, if we sit back like the taxi companies thinking there's never going to be an Uber that's going to come along and take our spot, well, I mean, look what happened.
Exactly.
So in the same way, we have to view AI and say, look, I have to come up with that next new idea on how to deliver the services or the products that I know well, this industry that I know. How can I apply to my processes? How can we adopt it over time? What technologies are out there? What's going to be out there? Because that's now your new competitive advantage.
Yes. And a lot of people might be thinking about AI, chat GPT, low code, no code. But I tell you, technology is touching everything. One of the biggest thing I would go back and that would change is 3D printing for construction. People don't understand construction. Oh, it is very heavy and no people. There are already people who are going back and investigating and working on that. I saw a video from China where they built a 7-story building in 24 hours.
My goodness.
And there's similar construction going on in Australia right now. And these people,
that's unreal.
It is unreal. And the reason is they're not able to, when you go back to a remote place, you can't get the people, the infrastructure, everything, right? So this truck with all the ready mix and everything else, they just go there. 2 or 3 trucks, boom, overnight, they're putting 3 floors, and next day morning they're done and they're gone.
Golly.
So just imagine if the construction people are not thinking and if they're not ready for it, they become dinosaurs in the 3 to 5 years.
Oh, yeah. And someone could, if you get a home builder that can do something like that, that'll revolutionize. It's going to, bring the cost down for everybody. There's so many benefits to these technologies. And once again, once we have the computing power, the problem solving power of some of these AI devices, especially the ones that with GPTs that now you can design yourself, when you can start designing customized GPTs, which is kind of like a low code, no code option. Programming option, you really are able to level the playing field for the small business. And if they adopt this technology and implement it, things are just happening very, very fast.
Yes. And that is something people have to be constantly. And the biggest thing I tell for small business is construction people. Basically, there are so many construction companies across the country, 20 employees, 30 employees, 40 employees. I would say at least I am aware of it over 20,000 companies. And if one big technology of 3D building comes, they can go back and eat away at least thousands of companies will lose their shirt. So they have to be ready for those things. So that has to be built into their 3 or 5 year forecasting and saying, when can it come and how does it affect? And are we ready for it?
Yeah.
So the debate has to start.
Yes, it does. All right. So we got political, economic, social, technological, environmental.
Yes. So the environmental and the sustainability is such a big topic for the last few years. So some has been regulated by the government. Some has it more adapted by the companies individually as their own practice, values, and everything else. But a combination of it is changing people and it is becoming increasingly competitive advantage for people. So the big companies, they have the money, they have everything else. They can go back and have somebody and work with it. But if you go back and look at it, I have a very, very good friend of mine, not my customer, but a friend. And they are into paper plates and everything for the party piece of it.
Yeah.
But once the people started looking at it saying how much of waste, because all of this has some plastic coating and plastic container piece of it, it is always difficult to destroy it. And they say it takes 80 years, 100 years to destroy that. And for he and his wife, they have been debating and working on different materials for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They found certain leaves from trees that is 100% sustainable. So after you eat and everything else completely goes back and completely recyclable.
That's amazing.
Or becomes part of earth. It is like forest, leaves falling and becomes part of nature, right?
Yeah.
So all of their products right now are completely made from leaves and plant-based material. There is no other material.
That's
it fantastic. Is like a small cottage industry. They went and opened their offices in India. And guess what? They're exporting much more. Their demand is so high, they can't keep up with it. Wow. They're exporting to most of the European countries because their sustainability is much higher than other countries. So they are going back and focusing on that and they're shipping it to. So they go back and say, we don't have an inventory for more than 10 hours. That is how fast they're selling.
Golly.
So that is sustainability. They went back, looked at an opportunity, really loved it and stuff, and said, let me change that piece of it. Mm-hmm. So it was huge.
Yeah, that's powerful. So when I think of environmental too, though, I think of, I guess there are parts of the environmental that go back under the political, right? Yes. So I'm in Texas, right? So we've got the Permian Basin here, not too far away, about an hour and a half away, and a lot of oil drilling, fracking going on there. But those permits change based on the political environment as well. And so maybe some of those things will already be covered in political when we think about environmental. Like
some are similar, some are not. Like I'll get example, just to build on the example, if you go back and look at it from California.
Yes.
If you go to California, if you notice, you'll never get a plastic spoon because statewide they mandated that already. Yeah. You don't have anything.
Yeah.
So most
no
of
plastic bags at the grocery store. You have to buy a paper or a reusable bag. And so, yeah.
And then
parts
if you look
of Colorado
at the spoons that you eat, basically, if you go back and look at the spoons and everything else, 100% of the products in the use and throw market has to be recyclable.
Yeah.
So that is how the state mandates it as well.
Yeah. So once again, even like, let's say you're expanding into another state.
Yes.
This is where the PESTLE can help you because you can even look at, hey, I have a restaurant and we do a lot of to-go orders and we get these cheap plastic and styrofoam things. But in this other state, we're going to have to factor that into our costs and our overhead and then determine if we can still be profitable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest interesting part of it when I go to Dunkin' Donuts in Connecticut versus New York. In Connecticut, basically the cup is more plastic. It is not 100% destroyable or recyclable. Yeah. When I go to New York, the cup itself is completely paper-based. It is completely 100% recyclable, just there. And if you look at the straws, they can't sell plastic straws in New York. But in Connecticut, you can get a plastic straw. So each state has their own mandatory. And that is something which we need to learn from the environmental perspective as well, from introducing products or going into a new market. Or if you look at it from a 3-year perspective, you know what? I'm in Connecticut. All the states around me have made that eventually the government will be forced to change. So let us go back and come up with our own alternate for that.
Right. That's good. Okay. So that's environmental. So let's hit the last one here, legal factors.
Yes. And this is a big one because it can change a lot of things and you cannot control because legal is very important because you will be there. If you're not in compliance, you can be fined. Mm-hmm. Like one of the biggest thing is the worker classification, right? If you look at all this Uber and rideshare companies, they all go back and put all of their drivers are independent contractors or 1099 is what they're called. So at the end of the year, you're an independent contractor. This is the money they gave you and they give you a certificate and then you file your taxes, you take care of everything else. Mm-hmm. But the government is looking at it and saying, we want to change that. That is an ongoing fight right now that is going between independent contractors and stuff. So what happens is if the government passes a mandate, all of this become employees. So they become W-2s.
Yeah.
So huge.
That you pay Social Security on, that there's all the costs to the business, but then there are all the implications to the individual driver.
Exactly. So if I'm Uber and if I'm not thinking about it, I'm going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
A simple example from my own driver. Basically, I have to go catch a flight in New York City because I'm an hour and a half away. So for the last 20 years, I had the same person taking me back and forth.
Wow.
Great guy, everything else. But it is a private taxi service. So if you look at his income, 50% comes from people like me. They're all private clients, small businesses helping him and giving him the business. And 50% comes from Uber. So if you go back and look at it, and let us say Uber says a mandate because of the government classification and say, hey, you are a full-time employee. Now what happens? He is at the discretion of Uber and he has to do what Uber says.
Yeah.
So one of the things last year we were discussing about it, and I said, hey, you need to come up with a strategy and say, what would you like? And he said, sir, I don't want to be an employee. I liked driving a car because I can maintain my freedom. Then I said, you don't have enough customers to sustain 100%. So he's developing a strategy to go back and develop 130 and 140% of the capacity in private clients. So that if Uber says you need to become a full-time employee, he'll say, thank you, Uber, I'm not working with you and I'll go and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So now that is a piece. 1% show, he has only one car, one taxi and everything else. But even for him doing a PESTLE and looking at the legalities, he's going up and he came up with a plan. And now last year he was at 50%. This year he's going to end around 72, 73%. And by the end of next year, he really wants it to be over 100% of the clients coming from this.
Yeah. Well, and the great thing is he wins either way, whether the law gets changed or not. He is still living his dream. And yeah, no, I've worked with many Chick-fil-A's, and Chick-fil-A does delivery, and they use DoorDash people because, a lot of people use DoorDash, and they try to recruit some of these, DoorDashers that are good, that are, people that they would want to have as an employee. And the DoorDashers are just say, no, why would I ever want to leave the 100% freedom that I have and be an employee?
Exactly.
I don't want to be an employee. That's why I'm doing Uber. And I can leave whenever I want. I can go to a kid's, game, or go to a play at the school during the middle of the day because I have the flexibility to do that. I can make it up in other hours. And if I work for you, I can't. So yeah, that freedom and independence as an individual driver is appealing, like you said, for your driver. And then forecasting, right? I love that you shared that story, and I think it puts a wonderful bow on this, because some people could say PESTLE, political, economic. Look, I got a construction company. That stuff doesn't matter to me. Excuse me. If it applies to the individual operator of one vehicle, one person business, then I think it applies to all of us, right? Every single one of us could take the time. And that's why we're giving you all these tools during this lead up to the new year. You don't have to wait till the new year. There are going to be some times, a couple hours, where it's going to be, people are at your house. You're all kind of recovering from eating too much food. You can go sneak away into an office, into a quiet space with a cup of coffee, and take an hour, a couple hours, and just write down some of these. Do a SWOT analysis on your business. Go back and reflect on some of the questions that we discussed in our strategic planning and growth as a process. Write down some KPIs. Do a PESTLE analysis on your business. Just take the time to reflect upon your business. And I guess that's really the biggest theme throughout this series is pause, take the time to breathe and reflect and look back at what has worked, what's gone well, what hasn't, analyze it, think through it, and then begin to think and imagine, forecast the future, and think about what's out there, what's coming, what's on the economic horizon, what's on the political horizon, what's legally going on around my industry or in my area, and reflect on that and put together a plan, right?
Exactly. Yes. I'm telling you, there are a lot of implications, especially from the legal factors, right? So one of the biggest thing right now, it is with the Senate or state, wherever it is in DC, they're working on it and saying basically the classification of exempt versus non-exempt, hourly versus exempt. So in the past, the limit was 35,000. If it is anything less than 35,000, it is always classified as hourly. But now they're planning to improve that and increase that anywhere between 46,000 to 52,000.
Wow, that's a big jump.
So that's a big jump. So there is an implication for an individual employee. There is an implication for a small business more than a big business.
Yeah.
And if they don't understand that piece of it, they will be really caught in between those and they need to scramble about it.
Yeah.
Now, what is the implication? So they can sit with their CPA or financial advisor or somebody and say, hey, if this changes, how does it affect our business? And then they can plan for the next year. If it is implemented, they already know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And if they need to make some structural changes to their business model or something, they can start working towards that now.
Well, that is a big nugget right there for everybody to keep their eyes open. I didn't even know that was going on, Raj.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a bill up for this. They're putting together a bill. Okay, so that's something definitely to watch, because if they change that, I mean, you're gonna have to pay overtime for people that maybe you've been paying salaries to, and enjoying that they work over 40 hours a week for $36,000 a year, $38,000 a year, and now that's going to completely change. So it's a big deal.
The Department of Labor is pushing really hard on that.
Yeah.
And that is going to be something which will change a lot of the small businesses' outlook towards finance and everything else.
Yeah.
And it is not that they have an option. Once it becomes a rule, they have to follow it, period.
Yeah.
So they better be prepared for that and see how they can manage that piece of it.
That's good. Oh my goodness. Well, what a great episode. I think there was so much value in there. Real life stories. Just fantastic. Raj, do you have anything you want to close with, or are you good to go?
I would go back and reiterate, talking about the small business point of view. So understanding PESTLE factors is vital for adapting and thriving in a VUCA environment. People talk about VUCA environment. Small businesses feel that more than the big businesses. So this is very key. And again, they don't need to spend days together, but really spending some time reflecting on some of these points and really asking their questions at least twice a year. Basically, once they're doing their 1-year annual strategy plan for 1 year and 3 years, definitely go back and incorporate this. And in the mid 6 months, like after 2 quarters, how are we doing with our strategy plan for the year? And are any of these factors affecting this? If they look at it at least twice a year and from a 1 year and a 3 year perspective, I think they're going to get a significant value out of the whole process. That is the advice my clients have seen. I have seen a lot of it. And that is what I would say everybody who does that sincerely would see and benefit from it.
That's perfect. Perfect. Beautiful. Well, awesome. Raj, thank you so much for that. That was very informative and great stories as usual. Thank you all for listening. It really is a joy. We enjoy doing this. We enjoy having these conversations and recording them and putting them out there for you all, so that hopefully you can put it into practice and experience greater success. So thank you so much for listening to the Raj and Drew Show for Entrepreneurs. We will see you on the next one. We'll see you later, Raj.
Thank you, Drew. All the best, everybody.